Welcome to another session. I hope you were well. In today's session, I want to talk about sleep and how this connects with depression, fatigue, anxiety, worry, stress, doubt, and poor health. You see, all living creatures, we all have times in our cycle, or since I used the word all, let's say they all have times in their cycle when they have to shut down. They have to shut down their metabolic activities in order to allow for healing, restoration, repair to take place. Human beings, we're not different. We have to shut down at some point. We have to stop our metabolic activities so that our bodies can heal, can repair, and so that we can restore them back to a state worthy of the demands that we place on them subsequently. Now, if we do not do this, we die. All living creatures, if they do not do this, they die. When we talk about depression, when we talk about mental health, anxiety, worry, doubt, in many ways, some of it stems from the belief in something external, the belief in something we feel internally, and the fear that comes with the uncertainty with what we might be feeling internally or what we might be observing externally. You see, dolphins, for example, they have to swim. Most dolphins have to swim constantly. They don't have the time to stop and rest and sleep and snooze. So what they do is they shut down one part of their brain. You might say one half of their brain at any one time, and the other half functions and the other rests and recovers, and then you have a switch. It's a useful redundancy that nature's designed into some organisms. Human beings, we do not have that option. We don't have two brains. We don't even have one brain split into two parts that we can shut down and we can continue to function. Therefore, we must learn, we must study the importance of sleep in our lives and how we can maximize and use sleep to our advantage. Many years ago, if you remember very carefully, for some who are into history, we had what we call the flu epidemic. This occurred just after World War I. There were people who suffered from the flu epidemic. And one of the things we observed, especially within the medical profession, was that there were neurological damage or damages that occurred amongst those who were sufferers from the flu. The neurological damages led to, for some of the people, a few number of them, led to the inability of those affected people to sleep. Every one of them died within 2 weeks. 2 weeks. You've heard this whole thing about 3 days without 3 minutes without air, something like that. 3 days without food or water, and 3 weeks without sleep. We started the process of understanding how important sleep was from that flu epidemic and those who had died after 2 weeks. The human body has since evolved, and so we say, well, 3 weeks might be the time frame. You have to get some sleep. If you go 3 weeks or more without sleep, you're toast, baby. You see, depression, for some people, not all people, is connected with insomnia, the lack of sleep. There's a frustrating thing that happens in our psyche. Insomnia, unfortunately, causes or leads to things such as distress, hallucinations mentally. It leads to things such as dementia and, unfortunately, death. So in today's session, I want to bring to your attention that there is a strong link between depression and sleep. there is a strong link between depression, the lack of sleep, and insomnia. But a lot of the pathologies we experience as people, we link those to sleep. Wherever we have and whenever we have any form of chronic lack of sleep in the society, we see spikes in harm that far exceed what most rational people would expect. For example, chronic lack of sleep kills more people on our roads than alcohol. Yet we hear about drunk drivers and people who drink and drive. Yes, those are all valid. What we do not talk about is the fact that most people are sleep deprived. We're not getting enough sleep. The lack of sleep facilitates and creates an environment for depression because your body's not resting and recovering. The lack of sleep drives diabetes, it drives heart diseases, it drives several things, dementia, cancer. What that simply means is that if you have an issue where you're struggling with either anxiety, fatigue, you're tired where you can't sleep, it's important to recognize that the quantity of sleep and the quality of sleep that you have are really non-negotiable. It's not something you can negotiate. You have to take it seriously. Yes, you might be waiting to see a professional clinician. Until then, can you make sure you get enough sleep? Because there are times, I know, for example, I'll give you a good example in my case. There was a time and this is one of the beauties of living in London. London is a fascinating place. I mean, there are very few cities in the world that can even compete with London. You have everything on your doorsteps. You have the excitement, you have the beauty, you have the eccentricities, the diversity, the buildings, the architecture, the drama, transportation, everything is there. When everybody wants to live in London, and there are few houses for set people, you have an imbalance between demand and supply. And so, since the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, we started to see a surge in houses being converted to flats. So you might have a house designed and built as a home, as a house, but converted to 4 flats. And so what you then found was these flats were converted, but without due consideration for acoustics. Therefore, you had people living besides, above, under other people, and therefore noise traveled. And I remember many years ago, I lived in this lovely Victorian building, and above me, no, not above me, because I always had this idea that I would rather be the one making the noise. So I always wanted to be on the top floor. Despite the ground and the first floor being more grand because of the volume of the space, the floor to ceiling heights. But I always felt, well, if I was going to stay in a flat or on a converted building of architectural beauty, that I would rather be on the upper floors. So I didn't feel the noise of the washing machines from the flat above, or people walking along the floor, sometimes uninsulated floors, music, loud noise, etc., people walking up the communal stairs. And at this time in my life, I found myself in a place and at a point where I was reminded of the importance of sleep. I had someone underneath my flat. They were not playing music too loud. They were not even having parties. They never had parties. They never put their washing machines on at wrong times. But for some reason, there was a change in the person's lifestyle. And so they had someone in their life who stayed over but snored. And the snoring was the worst I had ever observed. I mean, it was pathological, it was serious, it was significant, it was very loud. And I often used to think, how is it possible that snoring and the noise from snoring can transfer from a flat below roughly 3.2 meters in height, go through the ceiling, go through the floor joists, get through the insulation, the floor covering, and stop me from sleeping. And for many weeks, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't noise created and with an intention to cause harm. So it was a difficult conversation to navigate. You want people to sleep, but what happens when someone stops you from also sleeping? And I went through weeks of, sleep deprivation. And during that period, I came to understand the importance of sleep. For almost 15 years, I had worked in the city. And I would wake up, I would go to bed at roughly 1:45, and I would be up at 5. And so I had only a short few hours, 5 hours of sleep every day, and I functioned well. But I still had 5 hours of sleep. During this 2-week plus period, I barely had any sleep. I would have to go elsewhere and sleep in order to be able to function during the day. And so I realized how difficult it can be for people who are unable to sleep. The quality and the quantity of sleep are non-negotiables. You cannot negotiate. The question then becomes, why is sleep important? Well, fundamentally, if you're suffering from stress and anxiety, worry, mental health, is that you need sleep so that you can rest and recover. The body's put through wear and tear every day. We use energy, we create energy, we deliver energy, we consume energy. And so the body needs, like an engine of a car. You can think about if you drove a car for 365 days in a year without stop. At some point, the car will malfunction. Similarly, the body needs time to rest, to recover, so it can repair herself. Now, with poor sleep, we have damages with regards to our cells. Cell damage exceeds the healing. Think about this. I talk about energy generation and creation, delivery and use. If you have very poor sleep, then what you then have by virtue of that poor sleep is that you don't have time for the cells that have been damaged, which happens by virtue of wear and tear. The cells do not repair, and therefore the cell damage exceeds the healing that takes place. And whenever that occurs, you have health issues. It often begins in our head, in our mind, foggy brain, dizzy, a sense that something is wrong. We just know. We build up all of that in a pathological manner, and if we're not careful, we then have what we call amyloids, which are a build-up of a pathological protein in the brain, which leads to Alzheimer's disease, which also then we call dementia. You see, without good sleep, we struggle, we suffer, and we do not live our most fulfilled lives because we fall short. You need good sleep. I need good sleep. But the key thing therefore becomes, is it just sleep? Well, there are 3 parts to the whole process of sleep, and I'll try to cover this in the session that follows. You need good quality. Sorry, let me start with quantity. You need quantity of sleep. You also need an important reliance on the timing of when you go to sleep. This is what we call our circadian rhythm. And then we need quality sleep. Quantity, timing, or your circadian rhythm, and quality. And see, if you lived in the city, when you live in a city that never sleeps, you're stimulated every single hour of the day. You go to work and you're covered with all of this artificial lighting. Everything is stimulating. There's so many movements, so many people, so much activity, so much noise. Your brain is processing all of these thoughts and activities. You walk into the office, you need coffee, you need something to boost you, you need to stay focused, you got the deadlines to meet, and then you finish from work and it's the same thing. You travel home, you're stimulated, very stimulated. You get back home, you watch TV, you're stimulated. We're always exposed to artificial lighting. One of the fascinating things I found out much later in my life was how the certain parts of the country, depending on where you are. Where you have small villages, they're not exposed to the level of artificial lighting that we are exposed to in cities. The first time I actually observed this and was aware of what I was observing was much later on in my life, being in a small village and looking out into the sky, and I could almost count every single star in the sky. As I looked around, I saw absolutely nothing. It was pitch black. Why? It was a small village. The number of people who lived in the village were very few. The roads did not have street lights, so there wasn't any illumination, artificial illumination. And therefore what you find is the circadian rhythm of people who live in a village mirrors nature. You see, if you go back to the hunter-gatherer days, we didn't have all this technology and infrastructure and lighting and resources. And so people hibernated. In the winters, we hibernated. In the summers, we were super motivated and excited to explore. But we lived with the seasons. So we slept longer during, you might say, the autumn, winter months. And we woke up earlier and stayed up for longer during the spring, summer months. We lived with nature. We were in union with nature. And what we have to do, especially those who struggle with depression or fatigue or anxiety, is accept some of the beauties and advantages that come with technology. But we must design what we call boundaries and ways to allow us to mimic that natural cycle of life. In parts of the country, in the villages, at this time of the year, recognizing this is the winter, once it gets to about 3:30, it's pitch black, it's dark everywhere. And in said villages, once it gets to about 6 or 7, everyone is hibernating. And no one comes out until 9 in the morning. So you're forced by virtue of your circadian rhythm, which is different to those who live in the city, to sleep. So you get longer quantity of sleep and hopefully better quality of sleep. Depression is linked to sleep. Those who sleep well, those who get the right amount of sleep, both REM and non, tend to have enough repair that there's an offsetting mechanism that takes place with regards to mental health, depression and anxiety. The reason being the body has rested, it's been restored to its right place, it's recovered from the previous demands, and therefore the cells of the body function. You can eat the right diet, you can take the right supplements and multivitamins. Your mitochondria might not be going slowly, but if you're starved of sleep, you will suffer. If that suffering persists, you will become depressed. You will become frustrated. You will become anxious. So in today's session, as I close, I'll say to you, however you can make it work, you need time to sleep. For some people, it might require putting away all mobile devices, computers, anything that stimulates you at a certain point of the day, 7 p.m., 8 p.m., so that you allow the body to come to a natural state of slowing down, as though the sun is setting, and you're allowing the body to start to slow itself down peacefully so that you're ready to sleep. For some people, it might require you changing the light in your houses. So you have dimmable switches. So beyond a certain time, you dim the lights. So you're causing the brain to understand that it has to start shutting down all of the open windows. It's time to stop thinking about work. It's time to stop thinking about your health and your physique. It's time to stop thinking about the next goal or project. And it's time to just be. Sleep is important. And I hope if it's something you haven't taken too seriously, that you start.